4:12 a.m., Western Pacific, open ocean. The sea was calm, too calm. Under a moonless sky, a U.S. carrier strike group moved silently through international waters. From above, it looked like a floating city, one aircraft carrier at the center, surrounded by destroyers, cruisers, and support ships spread in a precise defensive pattern. Nothing about the formation was accidental. This was one of the most heavily protected naval forces on Earth, and tonight it was being watched. 4:16 a.m., first anomaly detected. Deep inside the carrier's Combat Information Center, a radar technician leaned closer to his screen. "Sir, I'm seeing something odd on the outer edge of the search grid." The contact was faint, low probability, but persistent. Then another appeared, then a third. Different bearings, different speeds, all converging. 4:18 a.m. Threat correlation begins. Advanced sensor fusion systems began doing what humans could not, connecting fragments of data into meaning. Surface radar, satellite feeds, electronic emissions, passive sonar. The conclusion formed quietly but unmistakably. This was not random traffic. This was coordination. 4:20 a.m. Subsurface alert. Below the waves, a destroyer's sonar operator stiffened. New contact, submerged. Slow, controlled movement. Then another sonar return appeared, and another. Multiple underwater contacts, moving with intent. 4:22 a.m. The carrier group goes to heightened alert. No alarms yet, no announcements. But across the fleet, posture changed. Aircraft crews were quietly recalled to ready rooms. Missile systems transitioned from standby to armed ready. Electronic warfare suites powered up. This was no longer routine navigation. This was pre-combat awareness. 4:24 a.m. Satellite intelligence confirms the worst. Thousands of miles away, analysts stared at imagery from space. Chinese naval units, Russian surface combatants, operating together, not near port, not during an exercise, but on intersecting vectors toward the same point. 4:26 a.m. A dangerous first in modern warfare. Joint operations between China and Russia were not unheard of. But this was different. Different timing, different geometry, different intent. This was not training, this was pressure. 4:28 a.m. The fleet commander is briefed. Chinese surface ships advancing from the west, Russian vessels approaching from the north, subsurface contacts likely belonging to both nations. Airspace above, still quiet, for now. 4:30 a.m. The trap begins to close. The carrier strike group adjusted course slightly, not to flee, but to optimize defensive coverage. The formation tightened. Destroyers repositioned outward to extend missile umbrellas. Every movement sent a message. We see you. 4:32 a.m. Electronic warfare escalation. Suddenly, the electromagnetic environment changed. Low-level jamming, unusual signal spikes, targeting radars flickering on and off. Someone was probing defenses, testing reaction times, mapping response patterns. 4:34 a.m. Submarine shadowing confirmed. Sonar operators now had clarity. At least 2 submarines, one consistent with Chinese profiles, another matching Russian acoustic signatures. They were not attacking, they were positioning. That was worse. 4:36 a.m. Air wing. Put on immediate standby, pilots ran through checklists with practiced speed. Jets were fueled, weapons were loaded, but safetied. Launch crews took positions. No one spoke unnecessarily. Everyone understood the stakes. 4:38 a.m. The first aggressive move. On the horizon, distant flashes appeared, barely visible. Surface ships powering radar arrays to full strength. Fire control radars, not searching, tracking. 4:40 a.m. A coordinated signal. At almost the same moment, a Chinese destroyer executed a sharp turn, altering its approach vector. A Russian cruiser increased speed, closing distance faster than expected. Underwater, a submarine changed depth abruptly. 3 domains, 1 message. 4:41 a.m. Weapons systems light up. Across the U.S. fleet, warning indicators glowed. Multiple foreign fire control radars now painting U.S. ships. This was no longer ambiguity. This was threat alignment. 4:43 a.m. The Admiral's decision. The order came calmly. Condition 1. All ships. The fleet shifted instantly into full combat readiness. Missile cells unlocked. Countermeasures primed. Every sailor at their station. 4:45 a.m. The airspace changes. High above the carrier group, radar picked up fast-moving objects lifting from distant decks. Aircraft, multiple, Chinese and Russian, launching almost simultaneously. 4:47 a.m. The coordinated attack take shape. This was no coincidence. Surface pressure, subsurface positioning, airborne threats emerging together. The carrier group was being tested from every direction. This was doctrine, and it was intentional. 4:49 a.m. First missile lock warning. A sharp tone echoed through a destroyer's CIC, missile guidance radar. Not fired, but locked. That distinction meant everything. 4:50 a.m. The line is crossed. In the dark waters surrounding the fleet, one submarine executed a rapid maneuver. Its acoustic signature changed. Weapons doors opening. The fleet knew the sound. Every Navy did. 4:51 a.m. The world holds its breath. This was no longer a standoff. This was the opening act of something much larger, and everyone involved knew the same truth. If a single weapon was launched now, there would be no easy way back. 4:52 a.m. As multiple inbound aircraft crossed a critical range threshold and underwater contacts closed simultaneously, the carrier group's combat systems synchronized automatically. Target Solutions populated screens. Engagement windows opened. The Admiral looked at the clock. Seconds mattered now, because whatever happened next would decide whether this became history or war. China and Russia had launched a coordinated, multi-domain attack on a U.S. carrier group. No missiles had fired yet, but every system was ready, and the next move would change everything. Disclaimer: this is a fictional military scenario created for narrative and analytical purposes. It does not depict real events, real operations, or classified information. 4:53 a.m. Western Pacific. Engagement threshold reached. The moment the engagement windows opened, the ocean itself seemed to hold its breath. Across the U.S. carrier strike group, combat systems synchronized with ruthless efficiency. Radar tracks snapped into solid solutions. Fire control systems refined vectors. Sonar returns were reclassified, updated, and prioritized. The carrier's Combat Information Center glowed with layered data, surface, subsurface, air, all converging into a single terrifying truth. This was a coordinated multi-domain assault, and it was happening now. 4:54 a.m. The first decision. The fleet commander did not rush. He did not raise his voice. He simply asked for confirmation. Confirm hostile intent across all domains. The answers came back in quick succession. Air targets maneuvering to attack profiles. Subsurface contacts opening weapons doors. Surface fire control radars actively tracking. There was no ambiguity left. The order followed. Authorized defensive engagement, do not pursue. 4:55 a.m. The sky ignites. From the decks of two destroyers on the carrier's outer ring, missile hatches snapped open. Vertical launch systems roared to life. Surface-to-air missiles streaked upward, tearing through the darkness in pairs and trios, their guidance systems immediately locking onto inbound aircraft. The night sky fractured into light. Above the fleet, Chinese and Russian aircraft broke formation, executing evasive maneuvers as countermeasures bloomed behind them like burning stars. 4:56 a.m. Carrier air wing launches. The carrier deck transformed into controlled chaos. Steam catapults screamed. One by one, fighters were hurled into the sky, engines roaring at full afterburner. Pilots barely had time to register the horizon before climbing hard into a crowded, lethal airspace. This was no longer deterrence. This was defense in real time. 4:57 a.m. Underwater alarms sound. Below the surface, the situation worsened. Sonar operators detected a sudden change. Fast-moving objects leaving submarine launch points. Torpedoes, multiple. Their acoustic signatures were unmistakable. 4:58 a.m. Anti-submarine countermeasures deployed. Destroyers reacted instantly. Towed sonar arrays reeled in. Helicopters lifted off, dipping sonar into the dark water below. Decoys deployed, flooding the ocean with false targets. The sea became a maze of sound and deception. 4:59 a.m. The first intercept. High above, a U.S. fighter achieved a lock on an inbound aircraft. Missile away, the weapon burned forward, tracking flawlessly. Seconds later, a distant explosion blossomed against the night sky. One attacker was gone. Others pressed on. 5 o'clock 1 a.m. Russian surface ships advance. On the horizon, Russian warships increased speed, their silhouettes growing larger by the minute. Missile cells aboard them activated. The threat was no longer theoretical. The U.S. fleet's missile defenses recalibrated, assigning interceptors to surface-launched threats that had not yet fired, but soon would. 5:03 a.m., a coordinated strike, int revealed. Analysts aboard the carrier realized something chilling. This wasn't chaos, it was sequencing. Air attacks drawing missile defenses upward, submarines forcing attention downward, surface ships pushing forward under the cover of confusion. This was doctrine refined through years of planning. 5:17 a.m., the balance shifts. With one subsurface threat neutralized and several aircraft destroyed or retreating, the coordinated pressure began to crack. Enemy formations loosened. Timelines slipped. The precision of the opening minutes gave way to fragmentation. 5:19 a.m., high-level intervention. Behind the scenes, emergency communications surged. Military hotlines lit up. Diplomats demanded answers. Commanders demanded restraint. The reality became clear to all sides. Continuing this fight risked something no one could control. 5:21 a.m., the pullback signal. Without warning, enemy surface ships altered course. Aircraft disengaged and climbed away. Subsurface contacts slowed and turned. It wasn't surrender, but it was disengagement. 5:23 a.m., U.S. fleet holds fire. The U.S. carrier group did not pursue. They maintained defensive posture, tracking every withdrawal until contacts faded beyond threat range. No one cheered, no one relaxed, because everyone knew this wasn't over. 5:30 a.m., damage assessment begins. As dawn approached, crews inspected damage. Scorched decks, shrapnel scars, systems strained but functional. The carrier group had survived. Later that day, strategic shockwaves. Across the world, intelligence agencies quietly re-evaluated assumptions. China and Russia had demonstrated coordinated, multi-domain pressure against the most powerful naval force on Earth. They had not won, but they had tested, and tests changed doctrine. Military analysis. Experts would later agree, this was not an attempt to sink a carrier. It was an attempt to prove that even the most protected force could be overwhelmed, if only briefly. That message landed. The coordinated attack had failed to achieve tactical victory, but it succeeded in something else. It reshaped how the world viewed naval dominance, because for the first time in decades, a U.S. carrier group had faced a unified challenge from above, below, and across the horizon, and lived to tell the story. Missiles were fired, ships were damaged, lives were nearly lost, but the fleet held, and the world learned just how close the ocean came to becoming a battlefield no one could step away from.